gather more here in the middle before we start the program. As we all know, we're all here today because of the action that happened in Ottawa, right? We know what Cansec. Are we all familiar why we're here?
Yes, also.
We're here because we wanna. Yes, exactly. So before we start the program, we just want to gather like more in the middle so we all are situated. Thank you. Let's all be familiarized with the chants that we're all gonna use. Yes? Okay, let's start with the one that we're all familiar with. 1, 2, 3. Love. Not even people. Do we see the cops that surrounds us? We need to be louder. But this is a familiar chant within the Filipino community, which is the one that we use in our joint actions. About what happened? Are we all familiar with what happened in Ottawa this morning?
Our comrades got arrested!
Yes. And we have 15 comrades who's currently in jail right now in Ottawa for stopping the Cansec, which is Cansec, the largest arms and weapons trade that Canada is hosting annually every year, and that is the role of Canada in maintaining the imperialist order. Shame!
Shame!
I can't hear you. Shame!
Shame!
So as we gather here all today, before we start our program, we want to open this with a land acknowledgement. Before we get started, we want to offer a land acknowledgement where we want to honor the land defenders across the Turtle Island. We want to honor the indigenous siblings, our comrades and friends in their ongoing resistance against the settler colonialism in Canada, in so-called Canada today. We know that what we are witnessing, what we have witnessed and seen in Ottawa is a grotesque display of Canadian militarism. And we know that Indigenous peoples in Turtle Island continues to experience the same repression to what we are seeing in Gaza today. Imperialism continues to commit war and genocide against people here and across the world. As Cansec happened earlier this morning, this is one of the clearest manifestation, explicit display of Canadian imperialism, where it plays a crucial role in the sustenance of Israel's military industry. They are exhibiting the same weapons that are being displayed and traded at the Cansec. This is what they use to suppress the indigenous communities here and across the world.
Shame!
And as we begin this program, we want to express our glory to land defenders everywhere and glory to our people's struggles from Philippines, from Palestine, and to all other peoples who are ending their oppression and the people's struggles against imperialism everywhere. Again, let's continue the chant. Long live! Before we begin this program, we have a following housekeeping rules. As we begin the protest, we have trained marshals here. As we can see, the people who are wearing vests, not the other ones, but the ones that are surrounding around us. We have the trained marshals. And if there are any issues, feel free to talk to them, let them know. So if we have marshals around the area, please raise your hand. And we want to ask our protesters to please not engage with the police. And we all know that they are everywhere right now. And this is how threatened they are. And if we have any concerns, please go to our marshals who will let the police liaison know. And we have asked them to not enter the perimeter of our protest. And we want to remind the policy of non-engagement when it comes to any of the instigators. We do not want to divert whatever is happening because we want to focus on the action. We want to focus on the messaging that we want to get across for today's action. And we have photographers within the vicinity. If you do not wish to be recognized in photos, we recommend for you to keep your masks on. And yeah, if you want to avoid pictures. And we also have media spokespeople to share our key demands and messaging for our today's protest. And we have media inquiries, please direct them to individuals. Okay, so as I've mentioned, we are all familiar why we are all here, right? Because of Cansec, because of what happened in Ottawa, the 15 people who got arrested there. And for context, Cansec, again, for those who are still coming in, Cansec is the largest arms and weapons trade in North America. And we are allowing it to happen here. The warmongers across North America is all coming into this place, in Ottawa, trying to talk about the arms and weapons that they are using to profit from the bloods of our people back home. And when we talk about Cansec, we are here, we are a grassroots alliance here who formed a Toronto Against Cansec committee where we have following organizations dedicated to shutting down Cansec. And not only this year, but to stop Cansec from happening for the upcoming years. Because why are we allowing this expo, this warmongering people to exhibit arms and weapons when it comes to they are profiting from bloodsheds against people? We are here today because we refuse to see another Cansec conference to be hosted anywhere in Canada. As we are all here, we stand united in opposition to Cansec, which is the largest weapons and military technology expo in North America, where Cansec represents the normalization and celebration of global warfare, state violence, and corporate profiteering from human suffering. Why are we allowing this? Are we gonna allow this even further for the upcoming years? No! Today, this morning, hundreds of people have showed up to shut down the biggest arms and weapons expo in North America. And we want to commend our comrades who made efforts to wake up at 5 a.m. and went to EY Center at 7 a.m. And the cops, they sent at least hundreds of cops to harass the people who are opposing the upcoming Cansec. Is that correct? Shame! Indeed, shame. And this is annually hosted by so-called Canada. And some of the people who attended this year, the War Machine Expo, some of them, over 30 people of MPs have attended the Cansec. The ministry, this morning, the Ministry of Arms and Defense, David McGuinty, spoke about rebuilding so-called Canada's military budget to triple from the 2014 budget. So that means he wants to invest for more money that goes towards war, that commits genocide across the world. Is that correct? Shame! Shame! We all know how we struggle consistently living here in Canada. We all know that we are living currently in a living crisis. We are struggling consistently from the continuous cutting of budgets when it comes to our social services, when it comes to education, healthcare, housing, and things that are needed by people. And yet, what is the priority for this government? It is to initiate more war. It is to initiate and feed the war machine. Shame! Shame! However, this is clearly the government's priority. From municipal to federal, and the increase of police budget, military, and being the annual host to Cansec. This is their priority. Shame! And not so long ago, we have seen the news, all over the news, the bubble zone. Are we all familiar with the bubble zone? We have seen every year the increase of police budgets. The police budgets that allowed to have all this police across us, to have an increase when it comes to their budget, to police us here who are expressing our right to protest. Shame!
Shame!
These weapons that are being exhibited are the ones that are being used to commit war crimes against our people, from Palestine to the Philippines, to Sudan, to Congo, Sri Lanka, and all other countries under the boot of imperialism. Shame!
Shame!
And again, we just heard the city announcement of a bubble zone that restricts people to exercise our rights to protest, our rights to exercise our freedom. And several council, Toronto Council have approved this.
Shame!
And yet, they are allowing these warmongering companies. They are allowing these warmongering companies to be in one place in Ottawa to exchange, to celebrate their desire to have more increase of money towards imperialism. Again, shame!
Shame!
And this is what the role is for Canada in maintaining the imperialist order. As a junior imperialist to the US, shame!
Shame!
And again, we are all here because we will continue to refuse. We will continue to refuse we will continue to refuse in allowing gathering war profiteers to continue. And from the streets of Toronto to Ottawa, we are gathering here, all of us here, to commit in realizing a future rooted in justice, peace, and international solidarity. Our unity here is binded by the commitment, a shared recognition that Cansec is a direct threat to our communities, both here and across the globe. The weapons that are sold for liberation and entrenched violence of policing, surveillance, and incarceration. And again, we come here together across as diverse communities and struggles of migrant justice, indigenous sovereignty, climate justice, anti-racism, disarmament, and more, because we know that our liberation are all interconnected. It is all intertwined. When we say long live international solidarity, that is beyond as a chant. It is within our principles. It is within our values. Our fight against militarism is a fight for safe, livable futures, for reparations and accountability, and for a world where life is valued over profit. We do not only oppose Cansec this year, but we are committed to ending it for all the years to come. To all the members who were present in Ottawa today, we demand an immediate end to 2025 Cansec conference, and we will continue to organize until Canada no longer hosts its marketplace towards violence. As we are all here today, we want to ensure that our demands are clear. We demand an immediate end to the 2025 Cansec conference before it enters its second day. Again, the Cansec started this morning and it's gonna continue until tomorrow.
Shame!
We demand for it to end and for all the future Cansec expos to end. Second, we demand that the Defense Minister, David McGuinty, to immediately step down for promoting and speaking at Cansec, and the rest of the over 30 MPs in attendance to be immediately recalled. And for those who are just coming here, to reiterate, David McGuinty this morning stated that Canada is taking immediate and decisive action to rebuild Canada's military and triple the military spending from 2014 levels by 2030. This a great this intense use of public funds. We want to ensure that we will not allow this. Our third demand is we demand an end to Canada's complicity in Israel's war crimes, genocide, and colonization of the Palestinian land. As Canada continues to export to Israel at high levels, last year Canada exported over $341 million in military goods to Israel, and this includes explosive and components of military aircrafts that are now being used to bomb hospitals, refugee camps, civilians, and thousands of children in Gaza. Shame! And our fourth demand, we demand the release of the now 15 people arrested in Ottawa this morning on trumped-up charges of assaulting police officers. How are we supposed to assault police officers? We don't have anything. And we are being told that we are disturbing peace. Shame! Again, as we all familiarize with the chant, we want to reiterate, and we are here because with the ongoing genocide that's happening, the arms and weapons, yet again, the ones that are being celebrated, the ones that are being showcased at Cansec are the ones that's being used against the current genocide that's happening in Palestine. Shame! And of course, to begin with the program, we have a set of speakers who will be speaking from different communities, from different backgrounds, who will express why we are opposing the ongoing Cansec that happened this morning. And I would like to call on Anak Bayan, Toronto, to begin and start us as we talk about the effect of Cansec towards our people. For those who are unfamiliar with Anak Bayan is a youth organization fighting for the national democracy in the Philippines, fighting for the rights and welfare of the Filipino people, Filipino migrants, Filipino youth here in Canada. I'll give it off to...
Warm and militant greetings, everyone here. I'm from Anak Bayan, Toronto. Oh, give me a second, I turned off my phone. All right. I'm from Anak Bayan, Toronto, a Filipino youth organization fighting for national democracy in the Philippines. Today, we join you in solidarity and in anger as we gather here to oppose Cansec and its annual celebration of imperial warfare and call for its cancellation. As a national democratic organization, we recognize that our own struggles are situated in the struggle against US imperialism and its many facets. Cansec, as a representation of the Canadian military industry, is a mechanism of imperial violence and cannot be allowed to continue. As Filipinos, we are no strangers to the violence of militarization. Our own people have faced down the barrel of a gun, displaced and dispossessed of our ancestral lands for the sake of foreign business interests. And the US and Canadian military industries are central to this injustice, with the Philippines being home to the largest number of overseas US military bases in Southeast Asia. These bases and the militaries they house serve to maintain the oppressive conditions of the Filipinos through feudalism, imperialism, and bureaucrat capitalism. Canadian militarism in the Philippines specifically seeks to protect its numerous investments and mining operations that continue to exploit the land and the people while increasing its military presence in the Indo-Pacific region. Last year, just last year, Canada and the Philippines had concluded negotiations on the Status of Visiting Forces Agreement, or SOVFA. Rather than the facade of these agreements being for diplomacy and for the good of the Filipino people, these unequal trade agreements bypass the constitutional principles of the Philippines and undermine Philippine sovereignty. Increased militarization in the area leads to increased human rights abuses, violence, and environmental harm, and submission to imperialist powers. They are backed, signed, and nurtured by the corrupt government officials of the Philippine government, like those of the current Marcos Jr. administration. And as Filipino youth in the diaspora, we recognize that the forced migration of our families are connected to the ongoing militarization and dispossession of our lands back home. Our home, the Philippines, is one of the most dangerous countries in the world to be a land defender, activist, or human rights advocate, with so many being killed or persecuted by the state for the so-called crime of speaking out against the system. And none of this violence could be done without the weapons developed, produced, and shipped by the US and Canadian military industries, amongst many others. It is because of the peddling of human lives, rights, and well-being that takes place in Cansec and beyond that the rights of people in my country are being stripped away. Why billions around the world live without food security, without access to healthcare, or without a roof over their heads. It is because of this industry's war profiteering that Filipinos are forced in our thousands to leave our homeland every single day. Why thousands leave their families and livelihoods to be exploited in countries like Canada and the United States, and why millions still are exploited back home. It is because of the genocidal capitalist ruling class that hundreds of thousands die every year to military conflict. Why countless are being murdered every day around the world, from Palestine to Sudan to the Philippines. In this era of ever-increasing militarism, where people across the world are being sacrificed for the enrichment of the few, we must shut down Cansec wherever we are, denounce and disallow unequal trade and military agreements like the SOVFA, and continue to oppose and expose corrupt governments like the US-backed Marcos Jr. regime. Let us call on the revolutionary history of our people, on the revolutionary history of the present, and never cease to agitate, organize, and mobilize for the futures of our people, our loved ones, and our very own. And so, we at Anak Bayan stand with everybody here to vehemently oppose Cansec and the perpetuation and glorification of imperialist violence that it represents. We oppose the endless violence, militarization, and killings brought about by this industry. And until the day that no child looks up in the sky in fear of warplanes and bombs, until the day that all peoples are safe from the violence of the oppressor, and until a liberated tomorrow, we all continue to call, mobilize, and fight for national democracy with a socialist perspective, for genuine liberation and national sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach, for that wonderful speech, for that agitating speech, and how Canada's role when it comes to the how Canada manifests imperialism towards the Philippines. Again, shame! Shame! And again, thank you to Zach. And again, let's chant before we begin with another speaker that we have in line. Again, long live that we just received. So among the 15 people who got arrested in Ottawa, one of them has been freed. We just got the news today. So this is a victory towards the people, our comrades back in Ottawa. And again, we will continue to echo what the action is being done there to here in Toronto. I would like to call on to our next speaker, Phil from CPCML, who will read a speech. And again, for those who are not familiar, CPCML is the Communist Party of Canada, Marxist-Leninist.
Thank you very much. I was one of the people that participated in the action at Cansec this morning. I see a number of other people here who also were there. I think that when I was going to Ottawa yesterday, a friend of mine was sending me information about the action that took place to protest the Zionist former minister to the United Nations and the resistance that took place there. And I thought that the people that stood up yesterday against that abomination, against that injustice, they represented the finest things about Torontonians, the finest qualities. The quality, and it was that act that was so dignified and gives honor to being a Torontonian. And the same thing happened this morning at the Cansec. There were at least I counted about 600 people, almost twice the number of people that some of the organizers were expecting. They were from all walks of life. Again, the issue of Palestine and the heroic resistance of the Palestinian people were front and center of the battle there. Other speakers have spoken about the fact that Cansec is the largest arms fair in North America, and there were many weapons dealers there. Elbit, the largest Zionist arms producer, was there. And there were ministers that were there, and the whole thing was to create business of war and weapons and killing. And the fact that we were there protesting Cansec, demanding that Cansec be dismantled, that Canada stand for peace, that the genocide against the Palestinian people be ended. These were all the demands of the people. And this is what we will amplify in the time to come, because it's us in our own organizing that's going to determine an end to Cansec. To appeal to these ministers, to be just, to appeal to them, to stop the brutality and violence. You know, I think it's good to say that, but it depends on our own organizing for an anti-war government in Canada that's going to put an end to this. That's important. I also want to say that the police attack on the protesters came towards the end, when almost half the people were leaving. It was then that the brutality took place. And it was, from my perspective, I watched this, and it was clear it was aimed to terrorize the people for taking a stand against war, imperialism, and the genocide in Gaza. I've got a few points I want to make. We are here to demand an immediate end to the arms embargo to end the military exports to Israel and to the U.S. for use in the U.S.-Israeli Zionist genocide against the Palestinian people. We condemn the Canadian government for its complicity and failure to uphold international law and hold Israel to account for the occupation and siege of Gaza, and the participation of the Minister of Defense and other Canadian officials at Cansec. Now, they were not just there, they were there to promote and to get people to buy weapons manufactured in Canada and other places. The imperial powers led by the US and NATO aggressive alliance use war and threats of war against countries and peoples that are defending their independence and their right to be, as in the case of the Philippines, as in the case of the heroic Palestinian people. To fool people, they tell us that Canada faces threats from China, from Russia. These countries have never threatened Canada. This idea of a threat is created so that more money can be taken from social programs and sent into military and arms production. Shame. Canadians want Canada to be a force for peace in the world, and they do not support the efforts of the so-called defense industry and the warmongering of Carney and his cabinet. The Carney Liberal government is a war government, have promised to increase Canada's military spending on NATO and its participation to rearm Europe. Over 600 people militantly protested Cansec this morning in Ottawa, reaffirming that Canadians and Quebecers will not be silent and will continue to oppose Canada's participation in wars of aggression and stand with the Palestinian people and all the fighting peoples of the world to demand an end to imperialist war and aggression and plunder. Canada, get out of NATO and NORAD. Canada, get out of NATO and NORAD. End Canada's complicity in the US-Israeli genocide in Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you, CPCML, for the speech and for exposing the role of Canadian state towards the people, the oppression that is happening across the globe, and the role of the Canadian state in this violence that we are seeing. Shame.
Shame!
And I would like to call on to our next speaker from ILPS, which is the International League of People's Struggle, to read a statement on why they are opposing Cansec, and I'll give it off to Min.
All right, thank you. Cool. So, today, the world's biggest warmongers started descending on Ottawa's EY Centre today and tomorrow for the annual Cansec Convention, billed as Canada's premier defense and security trade show. Hosted annually since 1998 by the Canadian Association of Defense and Security Industries, CATSI, Cansec has become a magnet for the most powerful and profitable players in the weapons industry. This year, Cansec is featuring over 280 exhibitors, including major giants such as Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and General Dynamics, BAE Systems. These firms are deeply implicated in wars, occupations, and repression from Palestine to the Philippines. Over 50 international delegations are also participating. While CATSI does not make the names of its delegations public, its statistics proudly highlight the influence of Cansec's attendees. According to the organization, 81% of Cansec attendees have purchasing power, and over 78% of attendees are top-level executives. This raises serious concerns that Cansec is a ground zero for facilitating human rights violations globally. This year's Cansec takes place against the backdrop of the ongoing genocide in Gaza. As of May 2025, Israel's assault on Gaza has continued for 20 consecutive months. By now, over 55,000 Palestinians have been killed, with major human rights organizations such as Amnesty International and the United Nations having accused Israel of committing war crimes. Yet, Cansec features numerous companies who are complicit in the genocide, including Elbit Systems, Israel's largest weapons manufacturer, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and software companies such as Google and Microsoft, complicit in the genocide by using AI-driven mass surveillance, predictive policing, and facial recognition, all of which are tools used to identify, target, and monitor Palestinians. Canada is no exception to the global arms industry, helping to facilitate the global arms trade and complicity in the genocide in Gaza. According to Global Affairs Canada's 2023 export report, Canada sent over $2.1 billion in military goods abroad, of which $30 million were exported to the state of Israel. Shame! In fact, Canada has become the second largest arms exporter to the Middle East after the United States, largely due to its arms exports to Saudi Arabia, amounting to over $904 million, or 44% of the total by value. Critics point out that Canada's arms exports routinely violate its obligations under the Arms Trade Treaty, ATT, which prohibits arms transfers when there is a substantial risk they could be used to commit or facilitate serious violations of international humanitarian or human rights law. Despite a non-binding motion passed by Parliament in March 2024 calling for an end to arms exports to Israel, Canadian officials have continued to approve licenses under existing contracts. Even with a popular movement from the Canadian public calling for an arms embargo to Israel, this means, in practice, that the flow of Canadian military components to arm the genocide has remained uninterrupted. Additionally, Canada's arms control regime leaves the flow of weapons to the U.S. unregulated, unreported, and without human rights evaluations. This leaves a loophole where additional Canadian weapons are exported to Israel via the U.S. without the Canadian public knowing about these deals. In response, grassroots opposition to Cansec is building. So in Ottawa, there's Shut Down Cansec Coalition. Here we have Toronto Against Cansec, and there are also rallies all across Canada. Protesters are demanding the immediate cancellation of Cansec, an end to all arms exports to Israel and other human rights violators, and the redirection of public funds towards healthcare, housing, education, and climate justice, not war. A mass movement to call for the end of genocide and war profiteering is now, more than ever, necessary. We must not let war profiteers, who profit off the misery of millions in the global south, get away with their crimes. Let us come together again this year to expose Canadian imperialism and to show that the people united want a collective and liberated future free from the imperialist arms trade.
The League of People Struggle, and again, and I've mentioned that we have different communities, we have different groups who have joined us today from the different perspective of people resisting the ongoing imperialist agenda that is not just the US, but also Canada. And I would like to call on the Canadian Federation of Students to speak on behalf of the student perspective and why they're opposing Cansec.
As the Canadian Federation of Students Ontario, representing over 350,000 students across the province, we oppose firmly the Cansec Arm Expo and stand in solidarity with all those who are organizing against war profiteering. As students organizing for a free and accessible education system, we know firsthand that any money that goes to funding genocide, weapons manufacturing companies, and mass displacement efforts has no room in our future. Our institutions are using our tuition money to fund the war machine at the very expense of the post-secondary education sector. Shame!
Shame! As students living in the imperial core, Cansec is one of the most explicit expressions of an imperialist system that profits from war. While we struggle to pay our rent, to find the money to eat, or access critical services and experience rampant program cuts in our own institutions, we observe an increase in the budget allocated to policing, militarization, and the suppression of student voices. Shame! It is clear that the priority of the government lies not with the students, and it will never lie with the voices of the majority.
Shame! The arms and weapons that are being showcased at Cansec are used to perpetrate violence against people both here in so-called Canada and across the globe. Shame! Shame! We remain committed to supporting and standing in solidarity with movements fighting against the imperialist agenda.
From Lockheed Martin to Raytheon, Cansec brings together companies that profit off of genocide, displacement, and global repression with the full backing of the state. Shame! 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 The war industry extends its roots deep into our campuses, from corporate partnerships to donations tied to weapons manufacturing. While we are experiencing a manufactured cost of living crisis, our institutions are actively fueling the war machine across the globe and are manufacturing students' consent by using our tuition money to fund these atrocities. Shame!
We know that students have always maintained a firm stance against the imperial war machine. And right now, students continue to be under attack from rising costs, campus policing, and political repression for organizing. Shame! Shame! 15 people were arrested in Ottawa for shutting down Cansec. Shame! Shame! At the same time, we are seeing increased policing and security on our campuses as a response to student organizing. Shame! 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 We reiterate our rejection of a profit-driven education system and government that invests into the war machine, and remain in full solidarity with all movements resisting imperialism.
Thank you, CFS Ontario, for providing that powerful speech, for providing the student perspective, for providing and exposing the role of the Canadian state. Again, the students' demand is to disclose and divest from this arms manufacturing company, from the military-industrial complex. And for that, we say to our next speaker, I call on to the Canada-Philippine Solidarity Organization, who will be speaking in behalf of the role of a Canadian who's in solidarity with the Filipino people and in solidarity with the oppressed people across the world. I'll give it off to Ryan.
Hello. Great to see so many people braving the delightful Ontario spring. Oh yeah. Canada-Philippines Solidarity Organization is proud to join fellow organizers in the Toronto Against Cansec Committee, opposing the brutality, imperialism, and war profiteering that Cansec facilitates every year. This morning, our comrades took to the streets in Ottawa and stood against the assault of armed police who protected politicians and profiteers making their way into the arms fair. And we stand now to salute their defiance. Let's hear a round of applause for the people in Ottawa. CPSO exists to support and build solidarity for the struggle for national democracy in the Philippines. With that mandate, we have the imperative to expose Canadian complicity in the suppression of Filipino people's struggle for genuine democracy and the violation of human rights committed by the Filipino government, supported by governments like Canada's. In the name of shame. In the name of anti-terrorism and a war on drugs, countless numbers of Filipinos have been victims of extrajudicial killing, kidnapping, torture, collective punishments, and other atrocious violations of international human law. Shame! 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 With the weapons and military technology sold to them and the political backing of international allies like Canada and the US, the Filipino government's abuses run rampant. Shame! Shame! This oppression takes place not only through the sale of military goods, but through the cooperation of Canadian and Filipino militaries. The status of visiting forces agreement signed in March of this year would allow Canadian military to be stationed at bases in the Philippines. The presence of foreign military in the Philippines results not only in environmental destruction, but also the direct, targeted harassment, murder, and sexual violence against the Filipino people. Shame! The Visiting Forces Agreement advances Canada and its NATO allies' encroachment into the Indo-Pacific region. Nations like the Philippines are used on the one hand as pawns in warmongering against China, and on the other as exploitable lands, rich in mineral and agricultural wealth, as well as valuable human labor. Deepened relations between imperial and imperialized nations will only result in further suppression of human rights and freedoms. Shame! Shame! The same weapons advertised and sold at Cansec are used against Filipinos, Palestinians, and other oppressed peoples around the world who stand for freedom, even in the face of the barrel of a gun. We have a duty to stand up against the regimes of war criminals. Shut down Cansec. Fearless struggle of the Filipino people, and long live international solidarity.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you to everyone who's braving this rain. Thank you for standing in solidarity with all the oppressed peoples who's being victimized by all this warmongering companies who are representing there currently at the EY Center. Let's give a round of applause for ourselves who are here today braving the rain. I would like to call on Yusef next to speak in behalf of the Young Communist League.
Yes, sir! Yes, sir!
Hello, everybody. So, as we already know, Cansec is the largest military expo in North America. And what did they tell us about the military? The military is here to protect us, to safeguard the national interests, all of that drivel they give us. But whenever the people here in Canada try to express their will, what happens? The military is used against them. It's almost as if the military does not exist to protect you, but to protect corporate interests. And that is what we as young communists, and I'm sure you all understand, that the military in the imperialist core exists to extract the raw resources from the imperialized countries for the benefit of the international bourgeoisie. And that is what we are fighting against here, to fight against our military-industrial complex, to oppose Cansec is the duty of every single Canadian who has any empathy in his heart whatsoever, who is opposed to the murder and genocide and the violations of human rights that Canada has been doing abroad since its existence. This military-industrial complex has always been exploiting us. It has always been exploiting students and workers and the vast majority of every single Canadian. So, that is why we're gathered here today, and as we'll continue to fight against it, because, as we know, the people united will never be defeated. No war but class war!
Indeed, happening in Ottawa. It is over 50 plus international delegations, and it also includes over 30 MPs who's participating in Cansec. I don't think we're loud enough. Shame! These people are prioritizing war over people. For that we say, shame! As we are struggling every day, these people are prioritizing bloodshed across the world. Shame! And as we gather here today, look how many police, how many cops are surrounding us as we peacefully protest against the arms and weapons trade show that's happening in Ottawa. Shame! And until today, Cansec hides over 50 plus international delegations attending. And this is a futile attempt to protect their interest, and they don't want the delegation to be known for the public to critique and agitate on. And as we are reaching the end of the program, let us all remember the people who are gathering all there today are part of the same system, part of the same institutions, part of the same government who are maintaining the imperialist order. Both as the US #1 imperialist and Canada being the junior imperialist, who are collaborating in maintaining that imperialist order. Shame! This, as we gather here today talking about Cansec, this is only the beginning. Our goal is to end Cansec in being hosted in Ottawa and for the upcoming years. So we are all here today as organizations, as grassroots organizations, to be united and to continue in carrying the momentum to stop that imperialist agenda. Yes? Cansec, there is also an upcoming G7. Are we all familiar with G7? These 7 countries are gathering soon, next month, in Calgary, to speak and to be touching elbows and to be collaborating in maintaining that imperialist order. Trump is coming here to Canada. Shame! Canada, along with the US and other countries, will be in Banff in June to talk more on how they're gonna commit more genocide across the world. Shame! And we will continue to oppose this kind of collaboration across imperialist countries. Yes? We will maintain to be united and committed to ending this genocide wars, to end these genocidal agendas that these countries are maintaining and profiteering from. Yes? Okay. Now we are reaching the end of our agenda, of our program, and we want to reiterate the message that we want here. We will continue to expose the arms trade for what it is. A war machine that continues to maintain this broken society where the few dominate and oppress the many. And we want to thank the organizations who joined us here today, the people who spoke, coming from different perspectives, providing those perspectives on how Cansec and these arms and trade weapons are continuing to commit bloodsheds, continuing to invest towards war. And we will continue to carry on this momentum. Yes? And again, we'll end this program by chanting, please reach out to the organizers, reach out to me, reach out to people who are all organized here as we continue to carry out this momentum and to end the Cansec. Feel free to reach us out to Toronto Against Cansec or TO Against Cansec on Instagram, and we will continue to carry this out. Thank you. As we end this, if folks would want to come to the front and have a photo, to see how united we are today. I know we're only a few, but this will continue to broaden, this will continue to grow as we are working towards our commitment to end this, to end Cansec. To the front and have a photo. Thanks.